Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? What's that? Oh, you're on mute. That's right. I'm sorry. Hey, good to have you folks. We are kicking off our session today. We have a number of people on so far. We're missing some who had signed up for it, so we're expecting more people to join us as we move forward. But because we have a pretty busy agenda today, we want to move forward relatively quickly on things. So unless there is anything that we need to be adding to the agenda that you have, let's get things started off with an update on the Homelessness Advocacy Day coming up in April. Laurel, are you prepared to handle that?
Yeah, and let me just chime in really quick with some basic stuff with the webinar. For those of you who have joined us on our LAC call in the past, you probably know that you can chime in at any time with questions using the question option on the right side or on your tool side of your screen. You can also raise your hand and I will try and catch you as soon as you raise it and give you time to type in a question. But as we go along, please feel free to send us questions, comments, concerns, and we'll address them as we go along and have time at the end for questions as well. So moving on with the agenda, our Homelessness Advocacy Day. We are still moving forward with this. We've hit a couple of roadblocks with our location here in Lansing, which has meant that we haven't been able to confirm a date. But this is our second annual Homelessness Advocacy Day. We're building on our success from last year, and we want to make sure that we have enough time to really make sure we get the word out and we get a lot of people to come out to Lansing and meet with their state legislators to talk about the policy priorities that LAC has identified. So we are moving forward with our planning and we'll confirm with everybody the date and location as soon as that is available. We are hopefully getting much, much closer to a date and location. We have a couple options in front of us, but the one that we're most excited about is going to be with the Lansing Community Center in mid-April. We're just waiting on the paperwork to get cleared and get the final okay from their administration before we can announce that and move forward with it. But that's kind of what we have for you right now. In the meantime, we are moving forward with developing our talking points, putting together our materials. We are talking about Advocacy Day with people in our networks anytime we participate in any COC or regional meetings. We are letting people know that this is coming up. So please help us by sharing that this is an event that will be happening in mid-April and that we hope to bring in a lot of people to Lansing to participate. We're focusing as well on getting people with lived experience to come in. So we're going to be leaning on agencies and shelters to connect with their current clients or former clients and try and help them come out to Lansing to participate. I think that's all that I have on our update. Jason, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
The only clarification I would add is Laurel said Lansing Community Center. She actually meant Lansing Community College.
Yes.
So it's right down the street from the Capitol. Want to make sure folks have a good idea of what we're talking about. No, otherwise I think you hit all the big items, Laurel.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes, LCC, Lansing Community College. One other item is we do have a planning committee that has met regularly. We have our next meeting in a couple weeks, and we will be looking and finalizing our material. So if anybody is very interested in that, let me know. We can connect you with that hopefully last planning committee meeting in a couple weeks. And that is all that I have for Advocacy Day. Again, if you have questions or concerns, please type them up in the toolbar and we'll make sure that we get to those. All right, that's it.
Shifting to policy updates then. Okay, Jason, you want to kick us off with an update on the state ID? I know there's been some stuff going on that's exciting. Anything that you want to share with the group?
Yeah.
Good.
Jason, are you still there?
Can you guys hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, that was weird. Turn the volume up for a second. Okay, so a couple of big things with state ID. First off, there is a webinar scheduled for this Wednesday, the 28th at 1 p.m. From noon to 1 p.m. And MCAH has partnered with the Calhoun, Kalamazoo ID task force and the Genesee County Clerk's Office and asked them to talk about local resolutions that all three of those communities passed last year, whereby they set aside local funds to cover the costs of for homeless individuals, or I think in all three communities, at-risk individuals with obtaining vital documents. So given the registration we have so far, this is turning in, it looks like it's going to be one of the largest webinars we've ever had. So obviously we know folks are paying attention and are interested in this type of information. So if you haven't seen that registration, I know it's on our Facebook page, and we can make sure that we send that out to everybody. In terms of other updates on the legislative front, there are quite a few things moving in the legislature right now. The most directly related to state ID and the work we've been doing is that we've got confirmation from Senator O'Brien's office that the bill she introduced last year, SB 404, which is focused on allowing for veterans to obtain free ID from Secretary of State, is going to be amended to include people experiencing homelessness. So it'll read that it'll be veterans and people experiencing homelessness will all be allowed to obtain an ID. So timetable is still a little unclear. The Military and Veterans Affairs Committee meets on a fairly irregular schedule, but it sounds like that within the next couple of weeks they will be having a hearing with the amended bill, and we will see what happens. But it sounds like within the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee, at least, there is a broad range of support for making the amendment, since it was the committee members themselves that asked the senator to do so. So that's pretty exciting. The other piece that's happening is kind of simultaneously is Representative Brand has introduced an appropriation on the House side for $150,000. Well, what I heard last week is anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000 to set aside funds that would help subsidize state IDs. So whether that ends up being with this expansion of the Free ID for Me program through SB 404, or even if SB 404 would for some reason not go through, we're thinking that we now have an opportunity to perhaps just expand the Free ID for Me program through DHHS and have them change their eligibility criteria. So one way or the other, it's looking like we will hopefully, fingers crossed, I don't want to jinx anything, but fingers crossed, we'll have some legislative action there. The other piece that's happening, and this is if you've looked at any of our materials from the ID task force, there's always been mention of this kind of two-tiered vital document system that exists here in Michigan, wherein at the local county clerk's office, the county clerks are able to give certain individuals certain documents, but then other individuals, depending on where they were born, when they were born, their parents' marital status, among other things, determines, depending on those items, they might have to get their documents like birth certificates, etc., from the central office at MDHHS. There is actually legislation that's coming forth from Representatives Guerrera and Johnson, and they're basically stopping this workaround with the legislation that they're proposing. So Representative Johnson's office reached out to us a few weeks ago with the proposed legislation, asked for feedback. We shared that with some of the leadership at the ID task force, and yeah, it sounds like it's fairly promising. So this was something we weren't really expecting, given all the other movement. But if we're able to get all of these things through this year, that would obviously be huge. So we expect with the legislation that's being introduced, with the vital documents legislation that's being introduced, not sure of that exact timetable, but obviously we'll let everybody know when there's hearings coming up that we would be asking folks from the field to come in and provide testimony, and that's true with SB 404 and or the appropriations as well. And I think that actually covers it. So, hey, Ryan, I saw your question or your comment that you joined us. Thanks for coming on board. I just wanted to make sure you didn't have a question.
Yeah, it doesn't look like we have any questions yet, but again, feel free to send them along. That was a lot of really good info and a lot of moving pieces with state ID right now. So feel free to send those questions in at any time. We'll pause or address them at the end. Anything to add to? Okay. So moving on to our decriminalization policy and work. We are moving forward with our client questionnaire, which was launched on February 1st. Our goal with this is to collect data that we are not able to get otherwise through our HMIS or through other counts that help us understand from the client perspective how many have experienced any kind of prejudice or discrimination as someone who is experiencing homelessness, either with the police or the court and judicial system, and then digging a little bit deeper into our other priority of trying to understand the impact of criminal records on access to housing. So that is being spread out through the state via COC networks and with our committee and the connections that they have with agencies and shelters. We did 2 webinars that went over the questionnaire and allowed for people to ask questions and make sure that they understood how we were asking them to administer it. Those webinars are available on our website right now. There was a recording as well as the presentation. So if you are part of an agency or shelter and would like to use this questionnaire, you still can. We're running this through the end of March. There's still plenty of time. We wanted to do just a quick snapshot so that we're not asking agencies to administer this in perpetuity because it is a bit of a time commitment. We're asking staff to administer it in person with clients as they come in. But we do feel it is a very important way for us to get information that will inform the way that we try to engage with legislators on this issue. So again, February 1st through March 31st is our timeline for this questionnaire. The questionnaire itself, the webinar, and the presentation from the webinar are all on the website. If you need any help finding that, let me know. I'm the person who's staffing this committee, and I'm happy to email that out. I'm also going to be sending out a reminder via our mailing list here this week, so you'll probably get that information regardless of if you ask for it or not. In addition to the client questionnaire, we also did a voluntary testimonial template that is also on the website. And this is our attempt to try and gather those anecdotal stories and identify people who would be willing to come to Lansing and share their story in person, either through testimony, through our Advocacy Day, or other opportunities as they pop up. So that template is available on the website as well. In addition to this client questionnaire, we're also working with the national campaign Housing Not Handcuffs on trying to get a sense of police trainings and how communities around the country are engaging with their police on working with the homeless population. So there have been some attempts to kind of facilitate some data collection through the Housing Not Handcuffs campaign. We are working here in the state to try and identify the best way for us to move forward and get this information so that we have a sense of what kind of trainings are provided, what kind of infrastructure is in place, just how the different police departments around the state work and kind of address this issue. So if you are interested in that aspect of our work in particular, please let me know. We are looking for some more kind of hands to help us corral this work and try to understand our best approach to get this. And then finally, we are working with another statewide agency or advocacy group called CAPS. They've recently changed their name, and I always forget what their new name is, but they still go by CAPS, I believe, for right now. And they are working on some things that we hope to partner with them on specific to expungement and crisis intervention training for police. And these are items that we're building into our ask for Advocacy Day. And I'll get into the expungement bill a little bit later. There's actually a bill that's been introduced that we are hoping to kind of bring some testimony in for. So I think that is all that I have. Our next meeting for this committee is going to be in the second week of March. It was scheduled for March 9th, but we have to reschedule that. I have another commitment that's going to have me out in Oakland County presenting on decriminalization. So as soon as we have that date available, I will make sure that we get back to you all. Thank you, Peter. Yes, CAPS, Citizens Alliance on Prisons and Public Spending. I always forget what the acronym stands for as well, so thank you for providing that information. Again, let us know if you have any questions. and we will make sure that we have time to address those. But that's all that I have on decriminalization for right now. And so next we have affordable housing, which is our third subcommittee and third identified priority that we're working on for this session. Jason, you want to take that one?
Sure. Thanks, Laurel. So the Affordable Housing Committee 2.0 had our first meeting a few weeks ago, and we actually had a handful of you from this call on participate in that meeting. So if Laurel and I skip over anything, feel free to chime in by making a comment. But really the focus was on making sure that we got everybody on board with the new direction that the committee was going to be going in, which included identifying other participants that we should reach out to, whether those were individuals or organizations, but folks who are invested in affordable housing here in Michigan, either at the local or state or federal level, and you know, whose voices would be invaluable as we move forward through the rest of this year. And then, not a big surprise, we started talking about the Advocacy Day and making sure that this was as one of the kind of primary priorities, policy priorities for MICA, making sure that we had identified a solid ask or asks that we can make of legislators. And I think the group came up with some pretty good ideas and targets that we could identify. And then lastly, the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for March 12th. But of course, as with all these other groups, if you are interested in learning more or participating, you know, you're certainly free to reach out to Laurel or myself, and we'll make sure that you're added to the email list, and that way you'll be in the loop and get announcements for the next meetings. So, Laurel, anything else worth adding?
No, just that I think calling it 2.0 is appropriate. I think we've got some exciting ideas for what to do with this committee and could really use some additional voices and experts to come join us. That's all.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there are no questions, somebody's raising their hand or providing any questions for those policy updates, let's go ahead and talk about the budget. It sounds exciting.
Our state budget?
Are we talking about state budget or federal? I'm on the federal. Are you on the state?
We're on state.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was jumping ahead to the federal updates. Let's go to the state updates. Jason, do you want to talk about appropriations?
Sure. I'd be happy to talk about appropriations. So I think everybody, I don't think we've had any late joiners, but as you heard me say during the state ID update, there is an appropriations that Representative Brand's office is making on behalf of the state ID project. The other piece during the meeting that we had with his office a few weeks ago was the ESP program, so the emergency shelter program that's administered by the Salvation Army and MDHHS. And last year was the first increase that program had seen, I believe, in 12 or 13 years. And the reimbursement rate went from $12 to $16. And compared to other states, we're still significantly below thresholds. The survey that was done nationally is the majority of states reimburse ESP program providers in a range of $25 to $75. So Michigan's obviously well below that minimum of 25, and so it was in a stroke of genius. Representative Brand's office is actually moving forward with an appropriations ask. At least this was as of late last week, and it looks like they're going to be asking for a $6 increase for the ESP program. With the hope that they are able to get at least a $4 increase by asking for $6. So in terms of timing, there are some hearings coming up later this week around DHHS's programs. On Thursday, there might be some opportunity to provide testimony. but it sounds like there will also be some additional opportunities to provide testimony going through March as well. And trying to remember, yeah, I think that's it for the appropriations for right now.
Can I just add something to that, Jason? I want to just make sure, because I didn't hear you say it, maybe I just was not listening properly. The increase, the per diem increase, was not added into the budget as proposed by DHHS this year. Last year, it was something incorporated formally into their budget request. This year, it's not. I'm assuming that it has to do with the fact that they went to the well last year, and because of some questions about what kind of revenues are going to be available this year, DHHS did not make it a priority to actually build it into their formal request. But that doesn't mean that they would not see that as something that would improve the situation across the state if an increase was in hand. So at this point, it's really outside organizations that are going to have to convey that message, and of course, legislators like Representative Brand. So it's our hope to be working with other organizations such as the Salvation Army. Marcy, we plan on working with some different groups to try to get together and kind of carry the ball on this one because we do think that the time is right for, particularly if we have legislators that are interested in it. So, sorry, just wanted to add a little bit more on there, Jason.
No, that's fine, and that's an excellent point to make. Yeah, this year is a little bit different than last year. With the governor's office not including the appropriations in their ask. So looking at the agenda, SB 404 I already gave the update on. So as far as I know, there haven't been any changes in the last few minutes. So Laura, I think it's on to you and HB 4798.
Yeah, thank you. This is just we put this in our agenda just as an opportunity to make sure everybody knows about bills that are coming up that are related to homelessness and housing, just so that you guys can keep up with anything that we're learning about and have opportunities to kind of engage on those. So just wanted to have a list here with the links back to the pages with the bills and the analysis. On the handouts, I should add for this webinar, I do have this presentation. I believe I may need to put a new one in there, so I'll send out the updated version later. But you will have the ability through that handout to click on these links and be able to access these bills. So House Bill 4798, this is the expungement bill that I kind of teased earlier. This is something that we are coordinating with CAPS, a possibility to try and do some action around. There's several expungement bills that have been introduced right now. This one is the one that CAPS is favoring at the moment. And what it does is it allows for expungement for charges that have accumulated during a 24-hour period, all related to the same act. So if someone is arrested and charged with drug-related crimes, there may actually be several different charges related to that one crime. Under current law, the expungement of these crimes are not allowable if they exceed a certain number. And so this bill would eliminate that kind of criteria and increase the number of crimes that can be expunged. So this is something that CAPS feels has the possibility to move forward and would obviously directly impact those that we work with who experience homelessness or at risk of homelessness, because we know that these individuals have difficulty accessing housing and services when they have a criminal record. So being able to expunge multiple charges would allow them to have freer access to housing and other services. So this is something that is currently sitting in the House Committee on Law and Justice. It was introduced back in June, and there's not been any action on it since then. There's no date that we know of for it to actually come up in committee, which is why we're coordinating with CAPS the possibility of trying to actually move it forward. We're not sure that it would move forward on its own. So we will be in touch if there is opportunity to bring people in to do testimony or to do written testimony to just talk about the impact that criminal records have on our clients and the people that we serve. So I will be keeping you guys all updated on that. Senate Bill 110, then, moving forward, is something that we have learned about through our affordable housing work in the committee that we put together. This is something that was a product of partnership between several counties and the Michigan Municipal League, and I believe as well the Michigan Association of Planners. And it is an attempt, it was introduced by Senator Schmidt, as an attempt to amend the Public Act 226 of 1988, which limits the powers of local governments to set up incentives or control rent for their communities. And so this amendment would eliminate or modify that so that communities have more power to set up incentives for low or moderate rentals. Right now, that's something that is very limited for them. They don't have a lot of opportunity to do that. This bill was passed out of committee back last week on the 15th. So it is something that has come out of committee with a substitute and is going to the full Senate. My understanding in talking to some of our partners is that this is something that is moving forward. They're optimistic about it. We don't have any call out right now for any support or any kind of testimony, but I'm not quite sure what it's going to look like once it gets to the House and what the reception is going to be there. So we will continue to monitor this and be in communications with all of you about if there's an opportunity or a need for us to come forward. This is something that we see as providing just a better opportunity for local communities to really have more control over how they address affordable housing. And be able to hopefully improve access to affordable housing moving forward. And that's all I have for Senate Bill 110. Just we'll be in touch about both of them.
Any questions? I don't see any hands. No new questions have come through.
Now the exciting federal updates.
All right. Okay, so most of you probably have an awareness of what's been taking place with the executive branch releasing a budget proposal on February 12th. Just kind of an overview. It does propose drastic cuts to housing benefits that would otherwise be helping low-income individuals. We're talking about seniors, people with disabilities, families with children, veterans, and other vulnerable people who have difficulty affording their home. So it is an equal opportunity slasher from that standpoint, that it is cutting across the board in many ways. Not 100% in every area, but a majority of the areas. And what is ironic is that it comes just a couple of months after a $1.5 trillion tax cut. So it's kind of hard for us to, in our minds, reconcile those two things, because we do see that it's going to be taking away housing benefits from those lowest income people by slashing programming. So just, in summary, I guess to put it into a context for you, it would be cutting HUD by $8.8 billion with a B in 1 year, or an 18.3% reduction in one fell swoop, and that's over. That would be, reduction from the 2017 levels. Now, there's also an addendum. I'm not going to go into this, but there's also an addendum that the president has put out that offers some kind of backfilling on it, but that there isn't clarity as to whether or not there is interest in that, and/or if it would provide the kind of tools necessary to fill the holes that his proposed budget would be creating. Even if that backfill was put in through the addendum to cover some of those holes, you would still see a $6.8 billion cut, or 14% cut. So that's just kind of a Band-Aid being put on a deep wound that the original budget would be inflicting. Amongst other things, it would underfund rental assistance through the Housing Choice Voucher by about $3 billion. Even with some backfilling, you're still looking at about 200,000 housing vouchers that would be lost in 2019. That tells you the scope of the cuts. And there is a good chart that's put out by the National Low Income Housing Coalition that each of you would be able to take a look at. It's a public document that they generated, which does show you a nice chart that shows the current numbers, the president's budget, the House and Senate projections, and then the 19 figures as well. Let me just walk through some things that I think are important, because there not only are some significant cuts. If you're comparing what the House and Senate are looking at versus what the executive office has put out, just about every area you'll see that the executive office is the lowest of the three numbers. But the thing that is of real concern is the fact that there are elimination of programs. And I think we need to look at that, because once things get eliminated, it's very difficult often to get them back into a budget. So that has some repercussions in the long run that I think are really startling. So the elimination would include the Community Development Fund. So the CDBG formula grants would be eliminated. Right now, that's $3 billion in the CDBG formula grants that would be pulled out of the budget. The home investment partnerships would be a reduction of $950 million to zero it out. And then let's see what other areas of elimination. There are some more, and I'm not seeing them on this chart. I'd have to dig into it. But my point being, it is an ugly picture if you look at that budget. And it's similar, I guess, to what was proposed initially by the executive branch last year. The budget that was produced, the draft that was produced, a proposal, really also was kind of a slash and burn. The House and the Senate, however, were the rational thinkers, I think, when looking at the budget, and last year did come through with numbers significantly higher than what the executive branch had proposed. This year, it's a little bit different, not in that the House and Senate are interested in providing more support for HUD, but the challenge also is the fact that there has been significant funding that will be lost going forward because of the tax bill, the tax cut that took place. So that puts pressure on the other side as well. There are some parameters to work within. So looking at the House and the Senate, I think we're more hopeful, but we're still looking at some decreases in some areas, though, and in some cases increases. So we'll just have to see how the negotiations take place. But right now, House and Senate, thankfully, are not aligning themselves closely with the president's budget, which again could really be catastrophic. In addition to reducing dollars, one of the concerns we have is an increase in the rental rates, or the share of the tenants and what they would have to be paying, moving up to a 35% share of their income versus the current 30% share of their income going towards rent. And then also concerns about some work requirements that may be associated with some of the programs and funds coming through HUD. So that's it in a nutshell. I wasn't going to go into a lot of detail, just give you a thumbnail of what's going on, and more information to be provided later. But would like everybody to be paying attention to it, because it will have significant ramifications on this state if indeed those things go through. Let me just mention something as well while I think of it. We often think about the budget and direct housing resources that are lost, but there are also additional resources that are looking to be cut, and that can have an impact on the access to housing in and of itself. So, for example, the National Housing Trust Fund would be eliminated. The Interagency Council on Homelessness would be eliminated. Let's see, trying to think of some other some funds that would be going to support community action agencies would be lost. The LIHEAP fund, so the kinds of resources that are in place to help support people who have economic disadvantage, or economically disadvantaged, or low income. A lot of programs help to sustain them. It's not necessarily housing or direct housing support, but this budget would attack just about everything and really put more people in harm's way and at risk of homelessness if they're not already in that position. So I'm going to climb down off the soapbox, giving you the overview, the gloom and doom, but please pay attention to it. And we really do need to have folks get involved as we move forward. Certainly the House and the Senate, I think, are supportive, and they have been. The Senate more than the House historically over the last 5, 6, 10 years. But we do need to make sure that we are the squeaky wheel, because there will be a lot of advocates out there trying to position themselves to have funding restored from whatever is proposed from the president's draft budget. So that's all I have. I'll take a deep breath and I'll let that all soak in, and I hope that that hasn't ruined your week by starting off with a meeting talking about budget gloom and doom.
Yes, so I think that the message that we're kind of working with here at MICA and that we're hoping to kind of carry through our LAC relationships here is that it is another year to try and raise our voices and do some action around the budget. And on that end, the thing that we're trying to coordinate now is related to the pending work requirements and rent increase, which Eric mentioned was included in the president's budget, and that we're hearing from our national partners may be picked up by the House in the next several months. There's a lot of great information out there, a lot of analysis and commentary about how this will impact those who receive housing benefits. In this PowerPoint, I have linked to I believe it's the NLIHC talking points about this, and this is something that I'll also be sending out with the notes and with the PowerPoint presentation from this call, because it does have some really great information and some context about how work requirements and rent increase will impact our communities. But MICA is trying to coordinate some direct action around this. We're working with our state partners to try and set up meetings during the March recess, which happen at the end of the month. This is our opportunity to try and get our people in-person meetings while our House reps are in their districts, and try to actually share some of these stories and some of the data about how the community will be impacted by this proposal. We are currently working and trying to identify agencies who are interested in having these meetings in each one of our House districts. So if you are interested in partnering with us on that and having a meeting, an in-person meeting with your representative, please let us know. We'll coordinate with you and any other agency that's in your district. We'll try and make sure that we have everything set up so that we have as many participants as available for these meetings once we get them scheduled. But beyond that, we also want to make sure that we're hitting all of our steps here and getting the information out to as broad an audience as possible so that we're building our base of advocates. We recognize that we will not be able to have in-person meetings with every single district, just based on history and on availability. There's not a lot of time in that recess, and there are a lot of people, as Eric mentioned, who want to meet with our representatives to advocate for their own issues. So we are going to be circulating a sign-on letter that will explain the impact of this proposal on Michigan, and we're going to circulate that far and wide, trying to get agency, organization, and individuals to sign on so that we can present that to our representatives, and then try to get some media outreach as well so that people who are not as in tune with some of these issues, our general public who may be willing to make some phone calls, get this information and have access to it so that we can just have a bigger hit with what we're trying to accomplish here. So that is all that I have on the HUD work requirements. I do encourage you guys to kind of read some of that analysis. One of the things that we're really focused on is trying to understand the numbers, trying to know specific with work requirements, how many individuals in Michigan actually who receive housing benefits actually do work and meet that requirement already. We suspect that this is a solution in search of a problem. And also trying to understand how many individuals who receive housing benefits in Michigan already are individuals with disabilities or the elderly who would be exempt from this or potentially exempt from this anyway. Just understanding the picture will help us advocate a little bit stronger. And so that's all that we have for our federal updates. There's, of course, lots going on, but that's kind of what we're focusing in on right now. So moving on to our calls to action. This is where we really lean on you guys to try and spread the word, raise our voices, make sure that we're being loud and obnoxious so that people pay attention. So the first call to action is related to Homelessness Advocacy Day. We do have a registration set up, but we have taken it down until we get our date set up. So just be on the lookout. As soon as that is active again, we will be sending it out, and I encourage everyone to register yourself and register those in your network so that we can have a strong showing for this event in mid-April. Also be on the lookout for this work requirement sign-on letter that I mentioned. That should be going out within another week or two. And then finally, I have linked a request from NAH, National Alliance to End Homelessness. They are still doing outreach on the fiscal year 18 budget. It's hard to believe that even though we're moving forward and looking at the doom and gloom that is the fiscal year 19 budget, that we still haven't actually move forward with settling anything for the 18 budget. We have, I believe, 3-4 weeks left for the extension that was passed for them to actually pass the budget, and NAEH is pushing people to continue to write into our legislators and make sure that we are asking for a $2.6 billion for the McKinney-Vento homeless assistance programs. The link that I have here that will be sent out to the group with the PowerPoint is a link to just do a quick and easy email. You put in your information, they provide the talking points. It's super easy, and it's just another way for us to make sure that we're pushing this issue, because we still have work for this year before we even can think about next year. Anything else, Eric, that you are aware of that you want to add to our calls to action?
Well, other than the National Low-Income Housing Coalition is going to be putting out a call to action for folks to be reaching out regarding the issue of affordable housing. And again, this is a budget-related issue. I'm trying to put that issue out, framing it as affordable housing. There are a number of ways that people are going to be able to frame their concerns about budget cuts at the federal level. Affordable housing is one of those. Some of those are resources for the as a safety net, etc. So keep in mind that there will be different ways that these things are packaged, and that participating in a variety and not just one single thing will be very helpful.
Okay, so we'll be on the lookout for that too. And finally, this is just our chance to kind of let you guys know about additional things that we're doing here at MCAH. So very quickly, I want to let you all know that we are holding our 5th annual Breakfast of Champions, May 31st here in Lansing. It is a morning activity. It's something that we hope brings in a lot of people from the community to come in and just celebrate with us the work that's being done to end and prevent homelessness in Michigan. This year we were bringing in Mark Domes, who is with the Center for Social Innovation and the Spark Project, to come talk to us about the intersect of race and homelessness. So he is our keynote, and he's going to be doing a fantastic kind of overview of the work that they're doing through Spark, which is a project to get into very deeply into, I believe, 8 communities around the country to do interviews and oral histories and understand what that intersect has looked like at that local level, so that they can gain lessons learned and actually identify actionable steps that we can take forward in our communities at the systems and agency level to make some changes in the way that we provide our services and structure ourselves, so that we are head-on addressing the issue of race and homelessness. So I encourage you all to look. I will send out the registration link. It's linked here in the PowerPoint. I encourage you all to attend. It's a $35 ticket. Sponsorships are available as well. We have a table sponsorship available where you can send in 8 people. You can send in your whole staff. We also encourage people who have lived experience of homelessness to come out and participate in the celebration as well and be part of our community for this event. Jason, are you still on the call with us?
I'm still here.
All right. You want to tackle the next one about the LAC champion?
Sure, yes. So hopefully everybody saw our email announcing that we were accepting nominations for the Breakfast of Champions. The 3 traditional categories we repeated from the last couple years. So we had our community champion, our public policy champion, and our volunteer champion. And this year we decided we had a conversation with the Legislative Action Committee, I think back at the October or November meeting of last year, about the idea of adding a 4th category, the Legislative Action Committee champion. And so actually wanted to use this as an opportunity to reach out to folks on the call, and we'll follow up with an email as well. But if you have a partner in the community who is outside the realm of working, whose primary focus is working with individuals who are homeless or providing housing, those are the types of champions that we want to hear about for the Legislative Action Committee champion. So prime examples would be like Dan Bowman from the Federal Social Security Administration, who was instrumental in developing policy at the national level that would allow the use of HMIS IDs for homeless individuals to get a Social Security card, something like that. So, because Dan's day job does not have anything to do with sheltering people, housing people, or preventing people from becoming homeless. His day job is running the Social Security Administration for this region. So, if you hear that and you think, oh, I know somebody in our community, a local politician, business person, whomever it might be, who's really taken the lead on some initiative or some project, that's the kind of people we'd like to hear about. So we have closed the nominations for all the other categories, but this category we are going to leave open for a while longer because we wanted to make sure it was part of the discussion today, and also give group members a chance to think about folks that they like to nominate. So when we do follow-up email, we will include the link to the nomination form. So that way, if you have somebody in mind, you can fill out the form, send it in, and we're good to go. So I'm also looking to see if anybody has questions or to see if anybody's nominating anybody, and I don't see that happening. So those are good. Those are good things, I think. All right, Laurel, did I miss anything?
Nope.
Okay.
Before I talk about the next agenda item, the May 30th training, I do want to just kind of tease that the next piece on our agenda is for any updates from the field. So I know it takes a little bit of time to type some of those up. So if you have anything that you want to contribute to the next agenda item, please start typing now or raise your hand so I know that you have something to add, and we'll make sure that we get you. So the May 30th training that is on the agenda, that is the Rock, the River, the Tree, Your Country, an anti-racism training for homeless service providers. This is something that Mark Dones, our keynote speaker for the Breakfast of Champions, is going to be doing for us. We're partnering with DHHS to bring you this training. And it is an all-day training. It will happen here in Lansing. And it is an opportunity to learn very directly from the Center for Social Innovation, who is a national leader on this issue. And the way that, my understanding, the way that they have set up this training is really a very hands-on experience for us to kind of unpack some of the issues around race in our communities and within ourselves, and understand what we are currently doing before we can move forward with ways to improve and correct some of the decisions, historical decisions that have impacted our communities. And so Mark has promised me some very tangible takeaways for everyone who participates in this training that you can take back into your agency, back into your network, and start making changes right away. This is a training that they offer online through the Center for Social Innovation as a 5-week course with, I believe, like a 75-minute every week where a live presentation from them. And it is almost identical to the agenda that they've sent me. For their online training, they charge, I believe, $275. We're going to have a much more reduced cost for this training, for this in-person opportunity to connect with Mark and learn from him. So we will be sending out that information very shortly. We're still trying to set up our registration and make sure that we have our location set, but that information will be going out soon, and I highly encourage everybody to be on the lookout for it. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for us to learn and to actually start a conversation here in the state about what we need to be doing to address that intersect of race and homelessness and housing instability. So this is hopefully the first of some additional opportunities that Michael will be leading to try and move us forward as a state and in our communities on this issue. So be on the lookout for that. I think it's going to be really exciting, and Mark is a fantastic presenter, so I hope that you're able to make it out either for that full day training or for his keynote at the breakfast or for both. I think he'll have some different information at both of them. All right, so this is what I teased earlier. This is your opportunity to tell us what's happening in your community. I have it listed as an advocacy update, kind of focusing in on some of the work that we're all here collectively to learn and move forward on. But really, any update that you have from the field, raise your hand. I don't see anything coming in yet, but I'm going to give you guys just a second to kind of think through that and see if there's anything that you wanted to add. And I think that's all that we have for today. So we'll
So Laurel, this is Jason. Yeah. I will contribute something from the field.
Please do.
Oh, yeah. So for folks that live in Southeast Michigan, the Washtenaw Housing Alliance is going to be hosting an in-person training on Tuesday, March 20th that is focused on learning how to be an advocate, essentially. Looking to see if they have the times on the registration form, but that piece I don't actually see. But we'll make sure and send out pass that information along to everybody on the call, because it's an exciting opportunity, and we're seeing that the Housing Alliance is really taking advocacy seriously. They've had a handful of local campaigns over the last 6 to 12 months. Primarily around zoning issues and making sure that affordable housing and the affordable housing needs within the community are being at least heard and ideally met. And so I think this is a good opportunity for folks in Southeast Michigan.
Yep, that's a great one. Thanks, Jason. All right, and I don't see anyone else raising their hands or sending us any comments with updates. Eric, did you have anything to add?
No, I don't. Just the usual. Thank you all for your time and your interest, and stay active and spread the word.
You will be receiving a lot of info from us in the next several months, so just please stay engaged with us and help us carry the message. Next meeting is March 26th, same time. You now have the opportunity to register for I believe actually the default is to register for all of our webinars for LAC. So if you registered for today, you will get notices for each month moving forward. LAC is also open. Make sure that you invite others who you think may be interested in participating. And that's all, I think. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Happy Monday.
Take care, everybody.